Good evening, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sibs Matiela, and I am the host of this podcast, which is called the Private Property Podcast. It's where you come with all of your property questions. I gather the experts because I don't know very much about the subject, but I gather all of the people who do, and they come on the show and they answer all of our questions. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're actually going to talk about diversifying your portfolio with the Managing Director of property.co.za, Sandy Walsh. Thank you. Sandy, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Sibs. Thank you very much for your intro.
Listen, first things first, we've heard this phrase over and over in like movies or like, when like big wigs talk and stuff about all of the millions of monies that they have and they go, I need to diversify my portfolio. What do they mean? What does it actually mean to now expand or diversify your portfolio specifically with regards to property?
Well, it's interesting because diversifying, it means just making some changes to it. So when you're looking at diversifying a property portfolio, it might actually just mean a humble purchase of a property which yields a rental for you. So it's not necessarily being one of those super duper people with so much money that they can extend themselves to buying all over the world. It just is looking at what else should I look at in terms of my investments that I'm making. And so, you're looking at all sorts of investments, but within the property portfolio, there's all sorts of options to choose from.
Okay, so what would I now need to consider when I start thinking about diversifying my portfolio? And by that, I mean, how do I begin the diversification process?
Okay, so say you are looking at, well, the most important thing is you want to take away risk in the market. So if you have invested in industrial and commercial properties, and a lot of people had done that in the past years, and they suffered over the time when we had the lockdowns. So there was a lot of concern about what to do with that investment. There were properties that weren't being used, and rentals weren't being paid out. So is that long term? You've got to consider these things when you're looking at diversifying. Should you jump out and stop doing that, or should you sit it out? And that's looking at risk and capacity for risk. How long can you sit it out? Maybe you can, or do you cut your losses and make a change? We've had some interesting things with some of the commercial properties where owners converted their commercial properties into residential properties because there was more interest in that. So that was rather smart. But not everyone can do that. Not every building is zoned for that. So it's looking at, how do I diversify my portfolio? If I've got a couple of properties, and say I've got 2 residential flats, and I think, how can I diversify? Because my tenants haven't been paying that well, and my yield isn't so great. What else should I be looking at? What are the other options in terms of property for me to diversify?
Okay, so let's say I'm a South African and I do have a million monies, right? I'm a high net worth individual. How much of this diversification should I be doing offshore, do you think?
Well, again, that is your what is your propensity for risk? Because now it's away from your known market. You need to really have a look at to what extent are you aware of what goes on in another country. So, okay, so you've got several properties here in South Africa, and then perhaps you decide you're going to buy in Germany. And you have to understand the market there. Are you going to buy for cash? Are you going to finance it? What sort of yield are you expecting back? These are all the things that are important in terms of investment. Should you be investing that all by yourself, or should you go into something which is consolidated and takes away that risk?
Sandy, what tips could you share with our viewers, maybe who are currently looking at diversifying their property portfolios? Like, what trends in the market should they be particularly aware of?
Okay, well, at the moment, one of the most important trends is that interest rate. We were so fortunate to see the interest rate drop dramatically to help everybody during the COVID lockdowns. And of course, now there's that adjustment, and that adjustment is taking us right up to the prime lending rate of 9% at the moment. And we expect that to go higher. So when you're looking at what how you're diversifying, the most important thing is how are you going to pay for that? If you've got all that cash in your back pocket, no problem. But most of our investments are actually even financed, and we have to keep an eye on that interest rate and see what's going on. The other thing to look at is, where are people buying and where should you position yourself? In terms of property is still all about location. It's never changed. It's all location, location, location. So where to put that investment? We're seeing quite a lot of movement from people in Gauteng looking in the Western Cape to diversify their portfolios so that they can extend what they've got in Gauteng into the Western Cape. So we've got a lot of what we call semigration. So people have kept their properties in Gauteng, but they've moved their families down to the Western Cape. So we've got all sorts of different options that have taken place.
Sandy Walsh, the Managing Director of property.co.za, thank you so much for those insights. And I do wish you would come back so we can talk a bit more about it, but that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Sandy.
That's lovely. Thanks so much for having me, Sibs.
Absolutely, anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you this evening. I will be back again tomorrow with more. That's it from me tonight, and that's it from the Private Property Podcast. My name is Sibs Matiela, and I'll see you again tomorrow evening.